Hey, what's going on out there? I'm Sean Devine. Hope you all are doing well. Today, doing something a little bit different. I figured we would do a quick studio tour, show you what is in the studio. I get a lot of questions about what I'm using and why I'm using it, and just a lot of questions specifically about my desk, which we will talk more about here in just a minute. But let's go ahead and we'll just walk around the room. I'll tell you a little bit about everything in here. All right, so I guess we'll start with the keyboards. And up here, we've got the Access Virus Indigo. This is one of my favorites since period. I've used this on so many of my productions, and I just love the design. I've always just really felt at home making sounds on this thing. Moving down here, we've got the Yamaha Motif ES6 workstation. When I was in college trying to get my degree, I was like, man, I really would like to get back into making beats and get a keyboard. And so I had actually tried this out at a local music shop. Really loved the sounds in it. Pretty much all of my first beats from like SoundClick and a lot of my first production work, I did all of that on the Motif ES6. All right, so we'll go ahead and talk about the desk. I get a lot of questions on the channel about this. This is actually a custom built. My father is a woodsmith, and so him and a friend, they just wanted dimensions and then a lot of the details in terms of like the rack space, you know, how much I wanted. And so I did a lot of drawings. There's also another desk out there that's similar in terms of just the layout. It's different dimensions, and there are some other subtle differences, but I'll put a link to that desk just to give you guys just something kind of prefab that is at least similar in terms of the layout. I've got, I think 6 units rack space on each side up here. And then I've got way more down here I'm actually not even using. So I could expand it at some point. Custom keyboard shelf. This thing is heavy as lead. I've actually helped the movers move this into second stories with like doors that are too small to get it in, take doors off hinges, belts on our arms, trying to lift this thing up into a second story balcony. But thankfully, thank God, I'm on the bottom level here. All right, so let's slide up here, sit down at the desk, talk about a little bit more of what's going on here. First of all, microphone. This is the Rode Broadcaster, and this is the mic that I use for, you know, all my narration, and I actually use it for a lot of the stuff that you've heard on my albums. I record a lot of stuff on here, which it's kind of interesting because this is a mic that's designed for broadcast specifically. So it has a very distinct sound to it, very mid-heavy. But once you mix it, I've just found that it works really well because it's designed to kind of cut through the mix anyway. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with a hip hop vocal. So, you know, once you do some of the mixing processing that we talk about on the channel, this is a really nice sounding mic and one of the better mics for hip hop vocals. Obviously, if I'm sitting here and I'm engineering my own stuff anyway, it's just convenient to have it there. Have it mounted on the Rode, I think it's called the PSA. And so it's just a nice, convenient boom arm. I guess we'll go ahead and talk about the monitoring here. Get a lot of questions about why my NS10 is sitting way below head level. The NS10 is a studio staple. I got used to them. I got a set of them a long time ago, and I don't use these as, you know, like a traditional B reference, in that I'm not listening to them for like imaging. It's more just about getting an idea of the vocal balance and kind of where the vocal is sitting with the instrumentation. I just find that the NS10 is really useful for that. My mains, which are the 2030, these are what I'm using for, you know, that more accurate representation of what's going on in the stereo field, frequency response, you know, all that stuff. And this is a 3-way monitor. They don't actually make these currently. I've talked to my friends at Event and Rode and have been hopeful that they would bring these back. They're not like a really overly bright monitor, but they have excellent low-end response and they translate really well outside of the studio. So that's why I use those. I had a pair of events before these, and so I've been mixing and mastering on events for as long as I can remember. Headphones, a lot of questions about the headphones. I use the Adam Audio SP5. These are great for monitoring. I do some mixing on these as well for the videos, and even some tracking. So just a solid sounding headphone. I also use the Beyerdynamic DT770s. The 770 is a little bit easier to mix on. All right, so on the desk, we got my MIDI controller, which this is the Keylab 61 from Arturia. Like the feel of the pads. It's also got some cool like chord memory functions where you can program chords, be able to trigger them up here on the pads, chord transpose. Very good implementation in the DAW. You can see in my case, I use Logic, and so there's a specific preset for that, and good faders, sliders that I can mix with. Great feel to the key bed, aftertouch. Just a very well-built MIDI controller. So let's see what else we got in the rack here. This is the DeepMind 12D. I wanted to have more of a tactile feel. Obviously, I use a lot of soft synths. I just like having a hands-on synth, especially for sound design. Had a lot of different virtual analogs, everything from the Korg Radius to the Nordly 2X, the Roland JP8080. None of them really filled the space that the Virus couldn't already. So I was looking for something, and then when Behringer said they were coming out with an analog synth in that same sort of form factor in the rack, I was like, oh man, I'm on it. So a 12 voice analog polysynth for the price they charge, it lives up to expectation. It's a great synth, really fun to program, sounds excellent. Moving over to the right side, we've got some recent additions. One would be the Solid State Logic Fusion. Just provides a little bit of analog magic and sort of that bridge in the gap between the digital and the analog world. I work in other studios a lot of times, and I love working on SSL boards, mainly because of the sound that you get out of the SSL. There's just something about the transformers and the EQs and everything going on in the SSL that just gives your mixes or your masters a certain sound. And that's what the Fusion does. You've got access to, Vintage Drive, the Violet EQ, which has an amazing top end to it, the high frequency compressor just to control your mix, tame things out, take out a lot of the harshness. Moving down here to the Aphex channel, this is just a great Swiss Army knife preamp channel strip. A lot of you asked me about preamps, and for me, my thing is I want to have a lot of different things in my preamp and channel strip. So you've got a useful de-esser, you've got a gate section, big bottom for those of you who are trying to warm up your mics a little bit. The EQ, kind of a utility EQ. I don't use it all that much, but it's there. Aural exciter, again, just a nice tone shaping feature. The compressor on here is kind of finicky. You can't actually set the attack time or the ratio. It does it on its own. It's got this easy rider compression technology in it, which depends on how you have the preamp set in terms of input and output. But it is usable. It's just not something that I use in every case. But again, this unit just has a lot of different things in here that cater itself really well to what I do in terms of recording vocals. Moving down here to the RME UFX, which is my audio interface. Is there really that much of a difference between, like a $200 Focusrite that I know a lot of you all are using and something like this, or a Universal Audio Apollo? And I would say there's definitely a difference. It just depends on what you're using it for, how much you're going to kind of pick up on that difference. But the number one thing that really is the biggest difference is going to be what kind of preamps, and then just like how many different inputs and outputs you've got, and the quality of those inputs and outputs, and the conversion that's happening. And so the RME is just really a pristine sort of front end in terms of the AD to DA conversions happening. The preamps are more utility. They're not colored. They don't have a lot of flavor, I would say, or character, but they're useful. In my case, I use the Aphex, so they're great, you know, if I need to hook up something additional. I also have 2 different headphone outputs. I can control those independently. This one's going into my vocal booth, which we'll talk about in just a minute, but also got the one that goes to my headphones here, so I can control those. We've got MIDI in and out, so that actually allows me to hook up my electronic drum kit to trigger a lot of things in the DAW, which gives me more of a live feel. And as a drummer, I just like having the ability to do that. And if I have something external MIDI, like a synth or whatever, I can hook that straight in. I also have the remote that goes with it. And for those of you who have an RME interface, I would highly recommend this because it allows you to, you know, one, you can control your monitors, both monitors, A or B. You can just switch it to A or B on here and control both of those independently. You've also got, you know, muting, dimming. You can switch your entire mix into mono just with one button. You got talkback, your headphone outputs, all kinds of stuff, and you can actually program this to whatever you want in the RME Total Mix software on the computer. So this is very, very essential and just opens up the UFX or any of your RME interfaces to have a lot more accessibility, and I don't have to reach over and, you know, be constantly grabbing the control here or switching through menus. Moving up here, this is the Rode Link, and I just use that as a wireless receiver for the mic that I have, which is called a Rode Performer. And so if I wasn't using the onboard Rode mic on my camera right now, I would be walking around with that. Great way to wirelessly record your vocals. So I've got that up there. And as we go down in the rack here, this is the Hafler Transnova P1500. This is the amplifier that powers my NS10s. There are a lot of people out there who like the P2000, P3000, or even like a Bryston or something like that. And to me, it's just overkill. I don't really need a lot of power for them. So the P1500 is perfect. And these are actually pretty hard to find these days. I've got a little drawer down here. This is just where I keep like remotes and random adapters and that sort of thing. And then down here, this is my power conditioner, which is a Furman, what is it? PL8C. Plenty of outputs on the back, and then I've also got an outlet on the front. So if I want to hook up my phone, or if I want to plug up, you know, like a keyboard that's going to sit on my desk, I've got an outlet there. It's also got some lights on it. So if I had some other stuff in the rack down here, got some more rack space and just a shelf with my modem on it. An additional Furman power strip. Got a lot of stuff back here. Didn't point out the fact that there is some cable management in the desk. Although, yeah, there's a lot of mess back there, but thankfully with that, you don't really notice it as much. Moving up to the top of the desk, got a USB hub. Gives me a lot of different connectivity here. Also have some power only outlets here. So I actually have a light. Supposedly having a backlight on your monitor provides a little bit less eye strain. So I'm all for that. So I've got that there. Then we've got another USB hub, and this one is used exclusively for my licensed dongles. Don't have a whole lot of stuff run off the iLok anymore, and the eLicenser I pretty much have gotten rid of except for Cubase. Let's get into 2020 companies out there and quit punishing your paying users. But anyway, moving over here, we've got the TC Electronic Clarity M. Did a full review on this on the channel. I'll put some links if you want to check it out. But this is just a great visual representation for me of what's going on in the mix. You've got a full spectral analyzer, vector scope, a LUFS radar that gives you, you know, your readings over time. So it's just very, very useful to be able to keep an eye on this stuff. As far as the computer, I've talked about this before, and I'll put a link to give you the exact specs of this, but this is an older iMac. I believe it's a 2010, and it served me well. I have done some updates to it. I've got a solid state drive. I've put more RAM in it, and I'm still doing well to this day, although it's on its last legs just simply because it's going to get to the point where I'm not going to be able to keep the operating system up to date. So it's going to get phased out eventually, but been a great computer. It's a 27-inch and a great screen on it. So it does exactly what I need it to, but yeah, we'll see what happens from here. I'll probably go with another iMac in this particular project setup, but yeah, we'll wait and see. If you're curious about the hard drives, I have two 2TB G drives, and they are clones of one another, have all my sessions, all of the sounds, and then one of those is then cloned into the cloud. So basically you've got 3 redundant backups. Typical just iMac keyboard. My mouse is a Logitech and I like it. I'm not sure which one it is. It's the M720. Nice mouse. It's got some additional programmable buttons on here. It's not like we're playing video games or anything, but I can switch through some different screens and things, and yeah, works pretty well. Moving over here, I've got my electronic drum kit. I actually started as a drummer, and I would love to have an acoustic kit down here, but I want to be mindful of my neighbors, and so yeah, it's just not realistic. So I've got my double pedals down there, DW7000s. This is the Roland TD4. I like to use these just to track drums, even for program beats, just to give it more of a live feel and not quantize things as much. Also got the Behringer RD8, which this is a great 808 emulation. It's analog, so it sounds really fat, and I've been using it to create samples and program beats for different productions. You probably have also noticed all of these acoustic panels that are around the room, and these are actually made by a company called GIK Acoustics. I'll put a link to them below. You can actually build them yourself also, but they're very effective. I've got different sizes, and some of them are bass traps. So yeah, we got more bass traps over here in the corner. But yes, I do have a vocal booth. Some of you have been asking. You see the window in the video. I'm not actually gonna walk you in there just because it's pretty much a glorified closet underneath a staircase. Put in mass-loaded vinyl, acoustic treatment, all that stuff, and then I actually had this piece of glass made by a local glass maker. It does the job. It seals it up really good. As far as some of the other mics that I use with artists, I like the Shure KSM32. I use the Rode K2. I like the, what else? SM7B, pretty good for certain things. Yeah, so those are like the main mics that I usually have set up in there for different artists. Got a sofa back here. This is a great little spot just to sit and get a more accurate sort of perception of the bass, because when you sit here, it all gets absorbed. All the low end just gets absorbed into this sofa. So people are hanging out, or if I'm wanting to reference something, this is the seat you want to hear the bass in the most impactful way. Moving over here, we got the JBL LSR10, which is my subwoofer, and just gives me that extended low end response that you need. This is a little bit bigger room, and so even with the 2030, which give me a great bass response, this just helps me get those extra lows down to, you know, like 30 hertz or so, or maybe a little lower than that, which is great. Also got the YouTube Silver Award, which is really cool. I thought it was only appropriate that this be sitting on top of the subwoofer, right? So shout out to my subs. And also got the Roland TR-08, and this is just fun to just sit on the couch, like when I'm taking a break, and program some beats, or you know, if somebody's hanging out, they can just mess with it. Got a guitar over here. This is a Jaguar. Let me kind of get in close so you can see that finish. It's a beautiful finish. This is called Sunburst. It's the name of the color. And yeah, I don't play a ton of guitar, but I enjoy it. I can play chords and do what I need to, so it lands in my productions a good bit. So yeah, guys, that is my studio. Hopefully that covered pretty much everything. If I missed something, or if you've seen something in my other videos that you're curious about, feel free to leave a comment, and I will try to direct you in the right way to whatever might facilitate your process. A lot of people ask, do you need all this stuff to make music? Absolutely not. But I've been at this for a long time. And for me, it's just about finding things that inspire the process. I work off my laptop a lot as well. I'll probably share that setup, and it's very minimal compared to this. But this is the more comfortable Project Studio setup. And yeah, it's fun. So again, I hope this is helpful, y'all. If you have any questions, let me know. And we'll talk to you soon.
I had some doubts up in my head for so long. They all tried to tell me that my dreams were so wrong. I had this faith deep down, and man, I knew it all along. Too bad you just tried to come around when you heard this song, yeah.